Hey everybody, this is Coach Blacklock here, and I may talk about some things and ruffle some feathers just real quick. So I love Jujitsu, I love Judo. Jujitsu is basically the ground game of Judo. Judo was really older than Jujitsu, especially the sport aspect of it. Jujitsu is the Nawazi part of Judo. And my background in Judo is under Dr. Ron Tripp and Sensei Burris, Pat Burris, who, congrats to you, sir, Sensei, you just got his red belt. But the Jiu-Jitsu craze has really taken off across the United States, and I'm all for it, but there's some misconceptions about it. It's being promoted to be the best self-defense, and everybody should use it as a great self-defense. And there's a huge difference between competitive jiu-jitsu and comprehensive self-defense, combative edges and circumstances like being attacked. There's some phenomenal operators out there, Navy SEAL guys, that they can do whatever they want to do. They're in incredible shape, they're strong as a horse, they train in combatives. And if they want to go to the ground and do jiu-jitsu for a self-defense situation, they can do that. There's also, even right here, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there's a guy or two, especially one in particular. I love to watch him do jiu-jitsu. He's a no-gi guy. He's a world player. If so be it, if somebody took him to the ground one weekend downtown or whatever, he can handle himself in jiu-jitsu. But the average person should not look at jiu-jitsu as a great self-defense. The best thing you can take from jiu-jitsu is sweeps and get your ass up. Don't be trying to pull guard. Don't be trying to do Americanas, Kimuras, omoplatas, guillotine chokes, all that crap that's being sold to you, because we have something out here called cement and asphalt. And it's very, very destructive to the body. It takes about 15 to 20 pounds of pressure to fracture the skull. Less than that to get you knocked out, dizziness, euphoria, and hanging on to somebody, as I bring one of my students here in a little bit to show you, pulling a lot of these guards and things and trying to get a lockdown. And listen, what you have to understand is this: even the toughest person in competition is not like the person on the street in a self-defense situation. You're dealing with somebody who's mentally messed up, or somebody that is chemically messed up, meaning methamphetamine, PCP, pilled out, whatever it is. So you're dealing with somebody who's not the norm. A normal guy sees an attractive girl, he looks at her, thinks some things, it's over. The average guy doesn't attack that female. The average person doesn't attack somebody coming out of a mall to take their $300 tennis shoes, or jump in their car and take their car, or try to steal your wallet. So that's the first thing that they're not teaching you when they're talking about real self-defense. You're talking about dealing with somebody who is a lot stronger, who's not going to probably tap out as easy, who's going to be very chaotic in their movements. And in being prior law enforcement and doing things in the civilian sector, I hear people say all the time, law enforcement needs to be trained better. One police officer should be able to handle that guy. I will never say that police officers shouldn't be trained better. Training is essential. And I think that lack of money and time in most departments, 100%, officers need to be trained more. However, it doesn't mean that an officer should ever go one-on-one because he can. That's ridiculous. There's a more of a chance of somebody, including the officer or the subject, getting hurt by going one-on-one. There's a higher chance of that officer having to escalate the violence and use something in that situation he wouldn't have to if 2 or 3 officers helped him. And then you got to understand the same thing, whether it's your girlfriend, your wife, your child, sister, brother, mother, father, whatever. Usually a police officer is not involved with the subject in a combative situation going to the ground with the average person. It's usually somebody who has just committed a crime or suspected of a crime. So their adrenal glands and everything is going through the roof. Or it's somebody mentally ill, or they're on drugs. And now you're chemically dealing with somebody. And I've been in those situations. I've had 130, 140 pound guys on PCP or methamphetamine. And with all of my background, it took a lot to contain that person in a proper manner, you might say. In fact, I can remember one in the early 2000s. He had been sniffing gold paint. He was on methamphetamine. I got one handcuff on him, and it was like a kangaroo. It was unbelievable what happened. I took him to the ground. I threw an ogoshi and threw him down, and then he literally, with all my protective vest, all my gear, I was on his shoulder blades in the gravel. He did a push-up with me on his back and stood up. And because of the use of force continuum here, where I was in law enforcement, you can't simply do a rear naked choke or a lot of the things that you see on TV. That's considered high on the use of force continuum. So I ended up fighting this guy longer than I should have. And at the end of the day, he had a history of drug use. He had a lot of paper felonies, stuff on paper, and he had an open needle, open syringe in his front pocket, which, thank the Lord, I wasn't stuck. There was no situation in that where jujitsu, even though we went to the ground, would have paid off. And so, me, especially jujitsu from the bottom. So when I'm teaching my fighters, or I'm teaching in the country, out of the country, law enforcement, military, bodyguard, whatever, I don't teach jujitsu from the bottom. The reason for that is I teach sweeps and get your ass up. That's the best thing you can do from the bottom. Because what they also don't teach you in the civilian sector, which they should teach you in law enforcement, is what we call the +1 drill, or the +1 mindset. If I'm fighting one subject, I have to assume somebody else will get involved. If there is a weapon in the situation, I have to assume there's going to be another weapon in the situation. So you have to understand that a lot of what you see on YouTube, a lot of what is being taught, isn't practical, hasn't been proven in the field, and is phenomenal in tournaments. May even work in MMA. But understand, Vale Tudo, no holds barred from back in the day, MMA as you know it today, that stuff still has rules. There's still a time limit. That cage has some padding. It's not asphalt or cement like I'm going to show you here in a minute. And there's a referee to stop it if anything gets too critical, and you can tap out at any time. So, all that said, a lot of what's being taught in self-defense, jiu-jitsu is great. It's a lifelong thing. It's like golf. You can go into the right gym with the right instructors at any level, from white belt to 4th degree black belt or whatever, and with the right environment, you should be able to train, get better, exercise, flexibility, fluidity. All those things are great. But don't be mistaken on what's being taught, that you can walk out of your gym and use it in a real life critical incident situation, especially if you don't have help. So I'm going to do some things here, and we're going to show you how detrimental the asphalt or the concrete can be. Even, it's probably 80 degrees today, but just think if it was 100 degrees here in the Midwest, 100 degrees outside, how hot is the cement or asphalt going to be? How long do you really want to play jiu-jitsu on the ground? And are you going to be able to implement the things you're using, especially if you're just a gi jiu-jitsu player? Most of the time, you're not going to have thick lapels and collar chokes and sleeve chokes. No, you're going to have t-shirts and shorts and tank tops and whatever else the perpetrator may be wearing. So don't take your confidence from in a controlled environment and think that it's going to be okay, and you're out running at 5 in the morning by yourself and somebody's going to come at you, or you're going to be able to protect yourself or your family by pulling guard or shooting in and doing a takedown. Even judo, if you follow through with it, you're going to go to the ground. And so it's almost like a knife fight in that you have to expect to get cut in a knife fight. You have to expect, if you go to the ground in any form or fashion, whatever your belt level is, you're going to if you go to the ground, you're going to have impact injuries. And we're going to show some of those here in just a second. All right, so this is a typical jiu-jitsu situation. He's in my guard. This is called full guard. Most of you that are watching this will know that. But as you can see, the back of my skull is on the concrete. My tailbone is on the concrete. Elbows are on the concrete. If I go to shrimp away and move, I want you to look at now, and of course I do have a training shirt on, but now my points of contact have my body weight, and I'm rubbing on the cement, so I'm going to get road rash. And yeah, Chris here, he's a lot bigger than me, but even if he's my weight, if we're in a struggle and he's pushing down on me, now I have his body weight, and even though I come across and I frame him and I'm trying to get up, see, now I'm scraping the skin off of my body doing jiu-jitsu. When what I really need to do is some type of impact on this guy, or some type of shock factor, whatever that may be, eyes, throat, whatever, and then I need to do that, and then I got to try to separate myself, escalate the violence, and try to get away. And I call it the 2 second drill. Every 2 seconds, I may have to do it over and over and over every 2 seconds to try to create distance, increase violence, separate myself, try to get up and get away. He has a leg, and just think if I was a female. What if Chris is some perv or he's on drugs or whatever, and he's tackled me back here, and I'm screaming hard trying to get up? Me being down here trying to do chokes and create all these angles and go for Kimuras and Americanas, I am scraping the hide off my body. And as you can see, I have melons here, and I'm going to show you what your skull is like on the concrete, and this is cement, not even asphalt. This is smooth, finished cement, so it's going to be way more sympathetic to my body and these melons than a typical cement or an asphalt situation. But me moving around, going for an omoplata or whatever it is, jiu-jitsu is overrated in real combative self-defense situations for the average person. And I want you to understand that. I love jiu-jitsu. I love the Nawazi part of judo. I love judo. I'd watch judo over MMA. I love it. But it's being taught wrong, and it's putting a false sense of confidence into a lot of people out there. So we're going to show you. We have a cantaloupe and a watermelon. One is littler than your head, and one is bigger than your head, unless you're, I don't know, maybe Chris. Same size. So, and like I said, this is finished concrete. It's smooth, and as I do this with this watermelon right here, you can see, I'll show you, so I'm just moving this around, I'm not pushing it, I'm just holding it, and look, it's burned the skin right off this watermelon. That's your elbows, that's your shoulders, that's the back of your head, that's your hip bones, that's your ankles, all the high points. Now, granted, that's a small price to pay to get away. But if you're doing that to get away, then it's worth it. If you're doing all that to yourself to play jiu-jitsu in a, basically any self-defense situation is a critical incident situation. And it takes about 15 to 20 pounds of pressure on the back of your skull to fracture your skull. And so here's a watermelon. That's about 15 to 20 pounds of pressure. That's your jiu-jitsu head playing jiu-jitsu, and somebody is on top of you, you pull guard, whatever it is, and they slam your head down. That's your head. And I want you to stay tuned
like our page, subscribe to our pages. A lot of stuff, we call it truth behind the smoke or behind the smoke. This is behind the smoke. This is real life shit. I'm not telling you not to do jujitsu. I'm telling you, know what you're learning and know when to use it and know what you can use. And don't fall for the harmolytical, philosophical, feel good, look good stuff, because fighting and staying alive is dynamic.